Joining me now to try to straighten this out for us, Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for President Trump, now senior advisor to the Trump-Pence 2020 campaign. Hey, Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us, man.
John, it's my pleasure. Good morning to you.
Corey, good morning. I got to tell you, despicable what the Democrats are doing, holding up this bill, which should have been signed 2 days ago, with their Halloween bag of progressive left-wing crap. Like, in the bill is same-day voting registration, collective bargaining for federal employees, things of that nature, $300 million for national public broadcasting. What does this have to do with the issue at hand?
John, this is so typical. We are in the midst of the worst pandemic that the world has seen in 100 years, probably since the 1918 year, so 102 years, and the Democrats believe that this is their opportunity to jam down a spending bill that they couldn't get through when they were while they were in the majority, to get the president to sign it. They think they have the president over a barrel. What they don't understand is that this president has said in his press conferences and through his use of the bully pulpit that if they don't present a bill to him, which is in the best interest of the American people, he will not sign it. And that's the accountability that this president is holding them to, and that's what he should be holding them to. Look, we saw this, John, when Bill Clinton was the president of the United States, and the Republicans tried to fill a bill full of junk. We saw this when Obama was the president of the United States, when Hurricane Sandy came through. We saw it, we've seen it time and time and time again, and this is the tried and true way that Washington, D.C. has operated for the last 30 years. It is not going to operate that way under this president.
Corey, the president yesterday saying that, look, he's willing to work with anybody, and he was flexible on some of the Democratic demands as it related to bailing out big companies. We've all been through this in 2008. The money went to the big banks and Wall Street. We didn't get crap. And then they went on vacations and junkets and everything else. So we've all been through this. We're sensitive to it, and I'm in favor of a lot of the restrictions the Democrats wanted. But I don't think that's at issue. It's things like funding for public broadcasting, expansive new tax credits for solar and wind energy, new emission standards for airline, same-day voter registration, retirement plans for community newspaper employees. I mean, what does this have to do with the bill?
John, it has nothing to do with it, but it's just typical. And look, the truth is, we know that the airline industry, by and large, has been very profitable over the last 10 years. We've seen that the chief executives have made a lot of money. We've seen that they've used their profits to buy back their stock to make them more profitable. And, John, I'm not opposed to helping industries that need help because of the coronavirus outbreak. But let me tell you something, John. What we should be doing is helping the American worker. Look, I grew up in a poor place called Lowell, Massachusetts, okay?
Right.
And I never believed in taking care of the CEOs. I always believed about taking care of the workers. And let me tell you what I think, and maybe it's a radical idea, John, and I'm putting an op-ed on it today in the Hill newspaper. I think that we should suspend the federal income tax so that when people get their jobs back, they're not paying federal taxes. This is in addition, John, to the potential suspension of the employment tax, which both employee and employers pay. But let me tell you why I think it's important. Because it's the number one tax, obviously, that the U.S. government collects, and it is directly affected by every single person, whether you're rich or poor, black, white, green, orange, or blue, who has a job, has to pay a federal income tax. And I know they're going to say, look, we have to keep the government running, we have to keep the government afloat. I agree with all that. But if we want to stimulate our economy, let's take a federal tax holiday for the rest of this year, and any income you earn, whether you're a W-2 employee, a 1099 employee, a K-1 employee, or anything in between, you don't pay income taxes on, so that we can jumpstart this economy. Because where we are right now is our economy is falling off a cliff. We have basically been in the corona pandemic hold pattern now for 8 days. And the president has said he's going to look at this after a 2-week window, which puts us 1 week from today, when I believe he's going to have to make some very tough decisions. But the primary decision, of course, is taking care of people's health. And the second part of this is having a strong economy. And the way to boost our economy, I believe, is having a federal tax holiday for the rest of this year. So any income you earn, you keep 100% of it, minus the state and local taxes that you'd still have to pay.
You know, I love that idea. Of course, I mean, that is going to drive additional debt. But, I mean, at this point, to me, Corey, it doesn't matter. We have to get out of this. Let me go to the press conference yesterday because I love the idea. But the reason why you're going to get opposition to it is because people are going to start to understand when the tax comes back how much they're paying, right?
That's right.
See, that's why your idea will go nowhere because of the fear of an uprising that, you know, I'm making $1,000 a week and I get $1,000 a week, right?
Can you imagine, John? Think of that for a second. And look, I understand it's going to increase our national debt, but we are also on the precipice right now of having an economy which could stall that. Look, some of these jobs are not coming back, and I'm not here to disparage the cruise line industry. It's obviously a very important tourism industry. But, John, most of those ships are not flagged in the United States of America. Most of those people who are working on those industries are not American citizens. And I'm not saying we shouldn't help those people. You bet we should. But we have to take care of the people, the small business workers who don't have a job anymore, the people who are working at restaurants, the people who own small businesses. Let's give them the opportunity, in my opinion. My op-ed will be up in just a couple hours here in the Hill to say, you know what, for the rest of this year, every dime that you make, you get to keep. And look, that money is going to turn around and re-stimulate this economy and grow it faster than we've ever seen it done. And look, I'm sure people are going to hate the idea. John, I don't care. I care about the American worker. I don't care about the CEO. The CEOs, you know, I looked it up. I think the Fortune 500 CEOs make an average of about $12 million a year. Okay, I don't think we need to worry about those guys right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, they're making $1 million a month. It's the person making $600 or $700 or $800 or $900 a week trying to pay their bills, living paycheck to paycheck. But all of a sudden, if you make $2,000 in 2 weeks and you get your check, you're getting like $1,300. All of a sudden, you get $2,000. You're going to be, where the hell is this $700 going? But it's a brilliant idea because you talk about jump-starting the economy to get all that money back and where we were, plus that would do it. Now, the president yesterday, Corey, signaling that we're going to have to do two things at once. He said the lockdown of businesses is going to be weeks, not months. And in a week or so, he's going to have to figure this out. And there's going to have to be a balance. Basically, what he said yesterday is we're going to have to live with the virus for a while, coexist with it. The death rate well under 1%, 0.07. Some people are going to die. It isn't good. He didn't say that, but that was the implication. But if you kill the economy, millions of people, Corey, are going to die. Stress, heart attack, stroke, suicide, alcohol, drug overdose. Is he doing the right thing?
Look, John, I believe that there is a dichotomy inside the White House right now between the Dr. Fauci's of the world who believe that quarantining the entire U.S. population is the right thing to do, and the people who understand the economy inside that building. And they understand that, you know, the president mentioned this yesterday, and this is not to sound obtuse, and this is not to sound like we don't care. 20,000 plus people a year die in car accidents, okay? And that is a national tragedy, and we should do better, okay? But we don't close the highways across the country and tell people you can't drive in your car anymore because you have the opportunity to die. We have about, John, 450 deaths as it relates to the coronavirus right now. And the people who are dying from that virus are, by and large, elderly people or people who have immune deficiencies or don't have a full fighting chance because of another problem they have with their body, whether it's recent surgery or whatever it may be. And, John, we've closed, by and large, we've closed the United States of America for business. And I'm not trying to downplay the severity of this. And I understand that people who get this coronavirus are going to get sick, they're going to be ill, they're going to feel like they're in pain. All of that I understand. But you have to look at the totality. We've got 360 million people, ballpark, who live in this country. We've got 400 deaths. and we've shut down the government for it. And look, you cannot have the world come to a standstill, in my opinion, from an economic juggernaut perspective, because people are getting sick. And look, John, I'm really not trying to downplay this. I understand the severity of it. But I have to impress upon people that if you live in the West, you live in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, right? You have land, right? You should be able to go and continue to run your day-to-day life. And people who are most impacted, those people who are living in high population areas like New York City and California, if the governors of those respective states say, yes, we need to close down these respective locations because we have an abundance of influx, then fine. That should be the decision of the governors. But I want people to be safe, but I don't want our economy to come to a screeching halt. And I think the president is understanding that. And I think a week from today, he's going to have to make some very tough decisions after we've been through that 15-day period of kind of self-social distancing where people are saying, hey, do I really want to stay home and not have a job when I go back because of the possibility of being sick? Hey, my neighbor is no longer in business. My loans are defaulting. My gas station owner had to close down because no one bought a gallon of gas in the last 2 weeks. Is this really worth it? And I think, without having speaking to the president directly on this issue, I think that's what he said when he says the solution can't be worse than the problem.
Spot on with that. I think that is exactly the situation right now, Corey. No question about it. The solution can't be bigger than the problem as it is right now. The other thing is the number of people that are going to die because of the stress related to not having a job, not paying their rent, their business goes under, the dreams that are shattered, the family breakups we're going to get. All of that, Corey, is going to come down the pike. And you have to understand that this is part of the decision that the president has to make. I'm 62 years old, so I'm part of the at-risk group, right? I was a chain smoker for a very long time, so I'm in that risk. But if you're asking me right now, do I want to shut down the entire country and the economy because I might get sick and that might be the end of me? Absolutely not. If I get sick and I go, I mean, it's too bad. I go. But I've got to be concerned about my children, grandchildren. It is insane what they're doing. But let me ask you this. Why do the progressives want to shut the whole thing down? Explain that to me.
Well, John, it's very simple. When you have a president who for the last 3 years has presided over what has probably been the greatest economy in our nation's history, whether you look at empirical data like the unemployment rate amongst African Americans and Hispanic Americans and Asian Americans and women, or you look at the stock market that has set hundreds of records since he has been in office. The only way to stop this president from winning re-election in a landslide in November is to bring his number one asset and make it his number one liability. And look, this is politics 101. So I understand what they're doing. This is, remember when John Kerry ran for president of the United States, he claimed to be a war hero and had, 3 Purple Hearts, and Swift Boat veterans formed a group to talk about the fact of what John Kerry's service was really like. And so I think what the progressives are doing here, John, is they're taking the president's best asset, which has been the economy, and look, that doesn't exclude the work that he's done on the deregulation side and the renegotiating of bad trade deals and the federal judiciary system, where he's appointed hundreds of new judges that will have long-term implications on our judiciary system. But you take his number one asset, which is a booming economy, and you make that his liability by closing the government and seeing our economy come to a standstill. The argument is much easier for the progressives in November to say, see, Donald Trump didn't deliver for you, and we have to go back to the way it was before under the Obama-Biden years, and that's why we need Joe Biden. So, look, their playbook is very transparent, in my opinion. They know that if the economy continues to boom in the way that it was in the first 3+ years of his administration, they know they can't beat him. We've heard Van Jones say it. We've heard David Axelrod say it. We've heard David Plouffe say it. We've heard many Democrat pundits say that in February, right after the president gave his State of the Union speech, he was almost unbeatable. Now, here we are 6 weeks later, and the world is truly a different place, and the economy is in a different place. So they don't care, by and large, John, about the impact this has on the American people, the American worker, or the economy. They simply care about defeating Donald Trump at the ballot box, and the only way for them to do that is to make sure that this economy falls off the floor. And remember, Bill Maher said this 2 years ago, I hope we have a recession, I hope we have a depression so we can beat Donald Trump.
You know, you hate to say this on the air, Corey, because it's not comfortable, but unfortunately, what you just said, and I've been saying the same thing for 2 weeks, it now appears to be a reality. I mean, these Democrats, they want this guy out so bad, they're cheering this recession on. I mean, you turn on MSNBC or that ridiculous CNN, and they will not give you any good news. Every day the hair's on fire. It's the end of the world, and they find some way to blame Trump on it. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Corey Lewandowski, Senior Advisor, Trump Pence 2020, former campaign manager, Donald J. Trump. Corey, let me ask you another question, another difficult question. The potential antidote, or what could slow the virus down, is the drug easily available, commonly was used for malaria. Now, it's had success in France. There's no quite documented success. It's had success here in America by one gentleman who actually saw it on cable news, called his doctor. They tried it. It worked. He's better. Now, maybe that's not a test. Maybe it's not FDA approved. Maybe it isn't going to work. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a pharmacist. But certainly it could bring hope. Maybe it's going to work. But every single left-wing media person is downplaying it, calling it crack pottery, blaming the president for what they say, peddling false hope. Why would they do that, Corey?
Because, John, it goes back to they don't want to give this president a potential win. Look, what we have seen now and what we have heard from the experts, the physicians, the doctors, is that the current remedies that we have are not working. And so Dr. Oz, who I think everybody in the world knows who that is, said he actually called this doctor overseas and got a hold of his wife, and his wife was a fan of the Dr. Oz show, and so they talked, and he said, hey, tell me about how this works, and tell me what's working and what isn't working, and he kind of went through this whole thing yesterday on TV, and I watched the interview that he did, and what it is, John, it's an opportunity. It doesn't mean it works for everybody, but the people who want to be able to try it at a critical time right now should have an opportunity, and look, we have to have efficacy, and we have to have a safe environment for people to try experimental drugs. But look, John, it's a lot like people who are dying and want to try something that is not FDA cleared. And the president had a law passed and signed into it. It's called the right to try. Right to try. And what that means is patients who want the opportunity to have access to medication which is not FDA approved can do so without being penalized. And right now, we as a government need to have a do-it-all, do-it-now approach, whether that comes to a vaccine, whether that comes to the economic side of this. Whatever it is, we should be doing it all and doing it now so that we can rid ourselves of this pandemic as quickly as possible. And if that means attempting to use experimental medication, which has shown some promise in other countries, and individuals want to try that, the fast track through the FDA should be cleared, and the president should be, and I think he is, and his team, saying, hey, if this is something you want to do, we will give you the opportunity as an individual with individual rights to go and try that.
Corey, that's spot on. I don't know why you wouldn't be hopeful that this drug could possibly be the answer or be helpful. Of all the things I've seen in the media, I think this is bothering me the most. It's why they're downplaying it, and you could extrapolate from this and say if there is an antidote to this, if there is a vaccine, if there is a remedy, if this can cure the symptoms, then we can get out of this and the economy doesn't crash. And even though it saves lives, Trump wins again. Therefore, they trash it. I can't figure out another angle here. I really don't.
Well, obviously, look, there is no other angle, and you hate to say it's all politics. It is all politics, and honestly, that's the worst part. We've got a country right now that is hurting. We've got a country right now that has tried to band together for the good of our nation, which means all of these people who are staying in their homes and, like me, I've got my 4 kids home with me. It completely disrupts everything that we have, had for a schedule and a system over the last 5 years. But the kids are all home now, and everyone is doing their part. And I think, by and large, that's what people are doing. But it has to still be an individual choice, John. And that means if you're feeling sick, don't go to work. Don't do yourself, any injustice. Don't infect your colleagues. But if you live in certain places, it is not a one-size-fits-all for everybody in this country. And I think some governors understand that better than others, and that's why you're seeing, particularly in the Midwest and the West, big states, area-wise that have a smaller population have not gone into the meltdown panic mode of, making people shelter in place right now.
Right. No, I think you're right. Look, the president's doing all the right things. I think in a week he's going to open the economy back up. We can't crash. We can't send millions of people out of work. I've got a businessman, Robert Ike, who's sitting with me now, who just came in the studio, who's going to be on with me taking calls for the next hour, owns a business in Southeast Virginia, 32-year business. I asked him to come over today, told me on the phone yesterday he doesn't know how he's going to make payroll. He doesn't know how to keep his people. His customers are going to all go away, and he's built this business up over 3 decades. You just can't shutter America in 60 days. And I got to tell you, I'm a fan of Steve Bannon, but his idea for a 30-day federal lockdown is insanity, okay? I just got to say that on the air. I love Steve to death, Corey. He's a friend of mine. I think that's an insane way to go about this because you're never going to recover after 30 days. And I'll tell you the other thing. What's going to be the metric to reopen it, right? Is it going to be 5% growth in the virus, 15%? 18%. If you shut things down, there's never going to be people happy to say it should be opened. Am I right?
John, it reminds me of this.
Am I right?
John, you're exactly right, and it reminds me of this. It reminds me of the union worker who goes on strike so that they can get a pay increase of 10 cents or 15 cents more an hour. But they go on strike for 3 weeks or a month or 6 months. Guess what? They end up with that additional 15 cents an hour, but they've lost so much revenue because they haven't been able to work for the 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months that they can never actually make that money back.
Right.
And that's where we are right now. I understand the federal government is pumping trillions of dollars into the economy to try and keep this place afloat, but every small business owner I know, and I know a lot of them, who own restaurants are saying, hey, we're closing our restaurant. We've had this business open for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We're laying off our best people, and there's nothing we can do. And once we lay them off, because look, the federal government by its very nature functions so slowly that in order for people to get money out of them, it is a 6 to 8 week long process if the SBA and FEMA and all these other agencies can actually get their act together. And that's more of a function of the federal bureaucracy than it is anything else.
Well, the same thing with the FDA and the malaria drug. Corey Lewandowski, great segment. I want to thank you. We're out of time. I love your idea of a federal tax holiday through the rest of 2020, but it's never going to happen because people are going to figure out the enormous amount of taxes that they pay. Hey, Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
John Fredericks Radio Network.